afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and it's an honor and a pleasure having this chance to discuss this afternoon with Minister Çavuşoğlu, a longtime friend of Mediterranean dialogues. He's the minister, as all you know, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Turkey. And we will be discussing with him, me and Maha Yaya, who's the director of the Carnegie Middle East Center in Beirut. Thanks for being with us this afternoon. And so, Minister Çavuşoğlu, let's start our conversation with a Turkish outlook on the difficult moment and world we're living these times. So it's a time marked by conflict, by uncertainty. And so, seen from your perspective.
First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. Indeed, we are living in a difficult world. It's a kind of transitions. It's difficult to follow the change. Forget about adapting to change, but even to follow it is quite difficult. Change is only constant in life, we know that. But today's change is faster and more visible. The impact of the change is becoming also very visible. And we can say that we are going through an era of rapid transformation. And systems' lifespan gets shorter, and the periods of uncertainty actually get longer. And we witnessed the birth of a new international system. But we believe that we shouldn't have, each time when we have crisis, we shouldn't have a new system. But today we have a problem to reform the current system. That's why actually we are facing many challenges, or the cost of the challenges or crises are higher. And we now have several new power centers and competing agendas. For example, technology has advanced enough that the food needs of the entire world can be met, but yet the food security is an issue because of the zero-sum mentality. And because of this zero-sum mentality, we are facing multiple crises, from climate change to energy insecurity. And no single country, we believe, can overcome these challenges. That's why we need a strong system. And however, the main issue is lack of trust among the states, among the actors. I just came here from Poland, where we had OEC ministerial, and one of the main themes was there, was the trust in decline. And OEC itself was a guarantor of the European security. But at this moment, it is facing an existential, I always have difficult to pronounce this word, crisis because of the global trust deficit. And the solution to this trust deficit, we believe that is in global governance and also the dialogue and diplomacy. In fact, there is a vicious cycle, I can say. Lack of dialogue feeds distrust. Distrust leads to division and polarization, and these divisions prevent any dialogue. To break this cycle, I believe we should have the courage to take the first step when others hesitate. This is exactly what we are trying to do. I think major powers like Turkey and Italy has more chance or more significant responsibilities in such difficult setting, because countries like Turkey and Italy can hold both sides in various conflicts. And because we are able to take a pragmatic view of events without being stuck in ideological battles. And that is why Turkey's role as an honest and reliable mediator has brought results. Istanbul Green Initiative and the Ukrainian-Russian prisoner exchange and the talks between International Atomic Energy Agency and Rosatom are a few examples. So to sum up, we should build the new system. It seems that it is needed, even though I hope, I wish we didn't need it. But to build a new system through dialogue, and this is only the way to achieve a win-win cooperation. So let me answer your questions now, if you have any left.
We have questions.
Or any question from the floor.
And Maha is starting with the questions. Maha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Monica. You mentioned the Ukraine war, and you mentioned factors of instability. The Ukraine war obviously is one of the major factors of instability in this region. Russia's been playing an interesting, Turkey's been playing an interesting role in mediating some parts of this conflict, including the food, including dialogues, etc. Can you perhaps talk to us a little bit more about Turkey's position, but also beyond what you've already said, but also how do you see this conflict ending?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for recognizing our role. From the beginning, at the start of the conflict, Turkey has been actually having a principled stance, and we have rejected this war, and we extend our support to Ukraine. I'll come to Belarus later on. I'll come to that, Ukraine. And,
it's a second Freudian slip now.
Right, and Ukraine appreciates our support, and we are rejecting this annexation referenda, illegal annexations, including the illegal annexation of Crimea, and we close the straits for the passage of Russian warships, and no military overflights from Russia to Syria. So we have been condemning these illegal acts together with other allies and international community at different platforms, including United Nations. But I just mentioned the grain deal and the other initiatives and confidence-building measures. Now, to end the war, how to end the war is a difficult question, because it is much more complicated now. It was much easier when we brought them in Antalya first, I mean 2 foreign ministers, but particularly when they met in Istanbul at the end of March. And I can say that they were close. I cannot say that they agreed on everything. First of all, they needed to get instructions from their leadership, from their presidents, but what they were negotiating were relatively more simple. Now it's more complicated, new realities. And Russia says that they are ready to go back. And with the new realities, they say, but are these new realities acceptable for Ukraine? Obviously not. So it's more complicated. And there are many other actors in the West. So I think we need to also convince some Western allies to do something to go back to negotiating table. Now, Ukraine is advancing on the ground, retaking some of their territories, occupied territories, but Russia, in return, deliberately targeting the civilian infrastructures. So life is getting difficult for Ukrainians particularly, and for us, for all of us, I mean, Europeans also. And I think before the springtime, and we will have clearer picture about the ceasefire or truce or negotiation table.
Thank you.
We will not give up, and as Turkey, we will continue our efforts. And this is the #1 issue that my president each time raises when he talks to President Putin and President Zelensky.
By spring, that's great.
Yeah, thanks so much. And Minister, you know what? There is something which is really undeniable. 1 year ago, the situation, even if we look at the relations between Turkey and Europe or NATO or the context of European security, the situation was very different. And Russia's aggression on Ukraine has made evident the role of Turkey in this landscape, in European security, its role within NATO, and different relations, even with the US and the rest of Europe. So in the light of this past year, which has been so troubled and complicated, how do you judge it? What is now the position of your country in this scenario?
Well, Turkey has been contributing to European security tremendously. Europe's border doesn't start with Greece in the south. In wider Europe, you know, Russia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, they are, or even some part of Kazakhstan geographically are in Europe, but in the south, Europe's and NATO's borders start at Turkey's border. So in fighting against terrorism, Turkey has been the main actor. We are only NATO ally that have been fighting against Daesh actively. We eliminated more than 4,500 Daesh terrorists. We deported more than 9,000 foreign terrorist fighters from 102 countries, by the way. And I think there have been more than foreign terrorist fighters, more than 125 countries. So in NATO, we have been one of the biggest contributor of NATO, and we are top 5 contributor to the NATO missions, NATO activities. I think to the global budget, we are top 8 contributor. And NATO always appreciates Turkey's role and Turkey's efforts and the contribution. But I cannot say the same thing for European Union. European Union reach us whenever they need, whenever there is a migration crisis. This is actually another global challenge that we have to face together. And this challenge has been actually is on the rise. And the number of the IDPs, not IDPs, refugees and migrants were around 70 million before the COVID-19. Now it is more than 100 million. So it will be one of the main challenge or crisis, however you name it. And whenever they need to cooperate with us, they reach us. But even on Ukraine, even though Turkey is one of the most effective supporter of Ukraine, there is a new EU mission to train the Ukrainian forces, and European Union didn't consult with us. Actually, according to the agreements between EU and NATO, EU has to do that. And EU is trying to exclude from all these security mechanisms of the European and European Union. And so whenever they need us, they reach us. But at this moment, yes, not only European countries, entire world recognize the role of Turkey. And 10 years ago, European Union was questioning our relations with the other part of the world. They were questioning whether there is a shift of axis in our foreign policy. Now they appreciate that we are only the NATO ally that can talk both sides equally. So we need to balance our relations between Europe, West, and other part of the world without assuming them as alternative to each other. This is exactly what we are doing. And I think what the role that we have been playing is not only crucial for our immediate neighborhood, but the entire world, particularly grain deal and fertilizer and other issues, and the efforts that we have been spending to resolve the issues through diplomacy and peaceful.
But are you skeptical about this improvement? It will last, or it will be once again?
I'm not skeptical, but I'm realistic. It can last anytime. Whenever Europe needs us, they are very close, very friendly. Whenever they don't need us, they just try to ignore. I was in Bucharest. You know, there were some politicians from Europe and European Parliament. You know, they tried to even undermine our efforts on grain deal. And some of them said that Turkey, Erdogan is doing this because Turkey is at the eve of elections, so Turkey also needs grains, and if there is no enough grain, there will be unrest. But Turkey is a self-sufficient country. We have enough grain. Private sector is important, importing grains, because our private sector, Turkey is the #1 pasta exporter in the world. We export more pasta than Italy. And the flour as well. That's why our private sector, but as the state, as the country, we are self-sufficient country. So I think, I hope European Union and European friends will understand the importance of Turkey, not only during the crisis, but in general.
Understood.
Let me, Your Excellency, move to the region, the immediate region. And what we've seen over the past maybe year and a half is Turkey moving more towards a de-escalation and improved relations with Saudi Arabia, with the UAE, with Israel, but even also with Bashar al-Assad, who was the archenemy. So how do you balance between the demands of these different relationships, if you like, and what Turkey has historically stood up for?
But here we don't have any concern to balance our relations between them. Between some Arab countries, there was an issue between Qatar and the other 4 countries. And again, our position was a very principled one. And we are against unilateral sanctions, we are against embargoes, we are against blockades, such blockades. So our position was very clear. Well, we didn't cut our diplomatic ties neither with UAE nor with Saudi Arabia. I can say that they were quite distant from us for a while, and then we normalized the relations. But it was our decision actually to cut the diplomatic ties with Egypt after the coup over there, whether you say right or wrong, but it was our decision. And we believe that now, since the world is changing and there are new realities and there are many, many challenges that we have to face together, since no single country or organization can actually face those challenges. So there are also opportunities, and crises actually bring the opportunities with themselves, and we need to also take the advantage of these opportunities as well. And we had also an opportunity with the new president and then the government in Israel to normalize the relations. It doesn't mean that this normalization is or will be at the cost of a Palestinian cause and the status of Al-Quds. It never. So, but I think this normalization is mutually beneficial, not only between Turkey and Israel, also for the region. And Egypt is an important country for Arab world, for Mediterranean region, and for Muslim world, for Africa, for all of us. I think in the current circumstances, our region particularly needs a good relationship between Turkey and Egypt. Therefore, we have no problem, to balance that. If we are open, if we are fair, you don't need. And Israel knows that our position on Palestinian issue will not change. But the dialogue helped in the Ramadan, for instance, and after my president called President Herzog, Israel decided not to allow anybody to do a mosque and in the last 10 days of Ramadan. So the dialogue has been helpful for all of us. So no concern to balance any kind of relationship. You have to be open, frank, and candid.
Well, hopefully it will.
Let's discuss another balance, Mr. Minister, and let's talk about the Eastern Mediterranean. You were already pointing at that.
I forgot to answer your question on Syria.
I will come back to it.
Okay,
I'll come back.
No, we'll come back. Feel free. I'll be back.
In Assad and Syria, it has been already 11 years, and this problem, this crisis, has tremendous impact on all of us. a humanitarian aspect is there. Refugees in the neighboring countries, in Lebanon as well, is also a big problem there. And the security problem, terrorism. Now PKK, YPG is trying to divide the country. We support the territorial integrity. And we believe that without reconciliation between the moderate opposition that's recognized by UN Security Council resolution and the entire world, and the regime, therefore, we need to engage with the regime as well to be more constructive at the Constitution Committee meeting and also in Astana format meetings. And we need to also engage with regime to return the refugees. It has to be a voluntary and safe and dignified return. We cannot push the Syrians or force the Syrians or any kind of refugee. It has to be a voluntary one. And we need to also cooperate in our fight against terrorist organizations without any discrimination. Therefore, I hope the regime also understands this. Without such reconciliation, there will be no lasting peace and stability in the country. We have to be realistic.
So now we go back to the Eastern Mediterranean.
Yes.
And again, a balance between the stability of the area, and Turkey is very much involved in the stability of the area, but at the same time, there is a, let's say, conflict of interests out there. So how you balance these two aspects?
Well, what is the conflict of interest? I want to hear you. I know what it is.
I mean, you know it perfectly, so I'm not going to explain to you about gas, about drilling, about all the possibilities in the region.
So what is the best way to avoid conflict of interest? As Turkey, we believe that equitable sharing. Equitable sharing. Why Turkey acted? Because the other littoral states in the Eastern Mediterranean form different platforms and ignoring Turkey and Turkey's and the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus inherent rights. And we have been calling for equitable sharing, and Turkish Cypriots have been calling for equitable revenue sharing between Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots. And if you look at the Sevilla maps and the so-called other initiatives, they have been trying to leave anything for Turkey at the Eastern Mediterranean. And now we took action on the ground, and we register our continental shelf to the United Nations, and then we call on European Union and the others. Let's get together and let's talk, let's discuss how to ensure the equitable sharing. Turkey is ready for that. And we have been always for diplomacy and dialogue, and we are also for resolving our outstanding issues, disputes with our neighbor Greece, peacefully and through diplomacy. But we need to tango, and Greece should also have the same understanding. Greek Cypriots should be also for equitable revenue sharing. When you talk to them, they agree that Turkish Cypriots also have rights on hydrocarbon reserves and other richness of the island or in that part of the sea. But when it comes to take concrete steps, they say maybe later, maybe later. And we also, I mean, if you look at the proposals of Turkish Cypriots, they are very flexible. It can be a kind of UN mechanism. It can be a joint venture. It doesn't have to be through an agreement between two sides, because that means for Greek Cypriots is recognition of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. But we have been supporting all these proposals and confidence building measures like on electricity and joint commission on irregular migration. And so in the Eastern Mediterranean, we have opportunities, but to actually take the advantage of these opportunities, I think EU should respond positively to our president's invitation for a conference, East Med conference, that all the littoral states can participate, as well as the countries that have energy companies in the Eastern Mediterranean. So Turkey is for equitable sharing, but of course, at the same time, it is our responsibility to protect the rights of Turkish people, as well as Turkish Cypriots. And the agreement, they haven't signed yet, but the agreement, for instance, that they made between Israel and Lebanon is in line with the proposals of Turkish Cypriots. So if there is a will, there is a way.
No doubt it's going to be a strategic discussion.
Badly needed. I'm going to go back a bit to Syria, just for a short bit, because we're hearing a lot about the possibility of Turkey entering into parts of northern Syria. We're talking de-escalation, but we're also talking about possible military action. We're seeing also military action elsewhere in North Africa. Can you perhaps talk a little bit about Syria in particular, and then?
Well, I just mentioned the aspects of the Syrian crisis. Terrorism is one of them. I mean, as Turkey, we are facing all these impacts of the situation in Syria, but terrorism is the most critical one. And first, there is no difference between PKK, YPG, PYD, or SDF. They are all the same thing. And the leadership of this organization over there came from Kandil Mountains. This is what Assad's then prime minister is telling everybody with the evidence. But we know. So this terrorist organization has been posing direct threat to Turkey's security. And in last 2 years, more than 2,000 terrorist attacks we have seen from Syria. And they killed 500 people. Our security people, we have martyrs and civilians, as well as Syrian civilians, innocent Syrians. They have been attacking the markets, they have been attacking the mosque, and they have been killing innocent people. They have been oppressing everybody, all the minorities. It is very interesting that even though they have been oppressing the Christian minorities, I'm not saying this to provoke our Christian friends, but Aramean, Assyrians, and they have been raising their voice in Europe. They have representatives, and because they are closing the schools of other minorities, including those, and they are forcibly recruiting their children. But our European friends, Western friends, including the United States, are closing their eyes because they have a separatist agenda. They are trying to divide the country. PKK couldn't succeed in Turkey. Now they are active in northern Iraq as well as in Syria. So, and from Iraq also in last 1 year, more than 800 terrorist attacks came. And in 2019, actually, we started operation against these terrorist organizations. Then we reached an understanding with United States and Russian Federation in 5 days. And they committed to push those terrorists to further south from our border, minimum 30 kilometers. But since then, they haven't met their commitments, neither US nor Russia. And the terrorists are still there, and they have been attacking us. In this case, we need to continue our operation to clean these areas from terrorists and terrorist organizations, as we did clean some of the areas from Daesh and other terrorist organizations in the last 4 or 5 years. So this is but at the same time, we are also in touch with the regime at the intelligence level, because this terrorist organization, as I said, since they have separatist agenda, is posing a direct threat to Syria and Syrian people.
Minister Çavuşoğlu.
Any specific question of that?
No, I'll pass it on to
No,
because we still have a few questions.
Okay.
On
There's just one last
Just
question,
one.
just to touch upon Libya for a second, because Libya is such another key element of the picture we're trying to depict together. And so Turkey has a role there, and so it's very much important to understand how you see the future of Libya, what's going on there, and what is possible to do, and what kind of action could be done to even help the process in Libya.
Well, the situation is still fragile in Syria, and legitimacy question is there. But as Turkey, from the beginning, we have been engaging with legitimate governments, and we have been for legitimacy in the country. And the current interim government is only the legitimate one. Of course, there is a parliament, there are other mechanisms, the State Council, High State Council, Presidency, Council of Presidency and the High State Council. And we have been engaging with them as well, and we are in touch with everybody, including Agile Salih, and he visited Turkey, but situation is fragile. And there were some neighboring countries and the other actors in Europe, and they were trying to also compete with us. Russia has still a presence there. Wagner has been in Libya as well. And but at this moment, I think we have more collaboration than competition among all these important actors, like UAE, for instance. I hope we can also work closely with Egypt as well. So what is the way out? I also consulted this issue with the new special envoy of the Secretary General last week. He was in Ankara, and I'm happy that we are like-minded, and we are like-minded with Italy and other actors as well. I think the concrete roadmap, including the elections. And of course, this High State Council and the Parliament should provide the legal basis for that. But even though the actors have been telling us that they are for elections, but they have not been taking any concrete steps to that end. And each of them are trying to open the way for their political future or their career in the country. But this country needs reconciliation, and this country needs actually stability and peace. I think a fair and democratic election is only the way to unite the country and for lasting peace and security in the country. And as Turkey, we have been contributing a lot. When Fethi Başaga tried to enter Tripoli, we were against, even though we worked very closely with him. And he's maybe is the closest person to Turkey in Libya. And when we prevented Haftar aggression, or they couldn't enter Tripoli thanks to our efforts then. But unfortunately, what he did was unacceptable, and we didn't support that. Contrary, we were against such actions. So legitimacy is important.
Again, Maha, if we needed a demonstration, we know that the Mediterranean area is key and strategic. The last word is yours, and then...
Just maybe a few words on Tunisia and the relationship with Tunisia. A little bit more on that.
Well, in Tunisia, there is an interesting transition period. I think they are at the eve of the election. Again, stability of Tunisia is important. They are facing some other challenges, including the economic crisis. When there was an Arab Spring, and many countries, many people thought that Turkey is supporting only Muslim brothers. The first government was, of course, Nahda movement and Muslim brothers, and we worked with them very closely. And then other governments came, and our relations became even better. So our relations is with the states and the people of those countries. But I hope this upcoming election will be fair and democratic, and also it will enable Syria to bring, I mix up the countries today, Tunisia, stability and progress and also welfare in Tunisia. Tunisia is a brotherly country for us, and Tunisian people are brothers and sisters. So stability of the country is utmost important for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. Thank you so much. Our time is over, and let's make a wish that next year, when you will be back to Med, the world will be in a much better position. Thank you so much,
certain.
Mr. Çavuşoğlu.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And look forward having you in Antalya at Antalya Diplomacy Forum, third meeting of Antalya Diplomacy
Absolutely.
Forum.
Thank you so much.